Hello, today we're featuring and discussing former First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. Now we'll look at her life after Franklin Delano Roosevelt died in 1945. Now, Truman, who had been the last vice president for Franklin Roosevelt, had taken over as president of the United States and was elected after that as well. And he asked Eleanor Roosevelt if she would like to serve as a delegate to the newly forming United Nations. She did not have a lot of experience with foreign affairs and was reluctant to accept the position, but she said she thinks she will do that. And she had confidence in the genius of Ralph Bunche. And a lot of people have kind of forgotten how awesome Ralph Bunche was, but he worked with the former First Lady as they were trying to come up. She was head of the Commission on Human Rights, and they were to write a declaration, a universal declaration of human rights. Eleanor was the chairperson, and she worked very closely with a genius named Ralph Bunche. Now, let me tell you just a little bit about Ralph Bunche. Here he is on the cover of Ebony magazine, is Ralph Bunche. Ralph Bunche was born in Detroit, and his mom had told him about the history of black people. He had pride in himself and pride in being black. And later, when his parents were separated, he moved to New Mexico and then ultimately to Los Angeles, where he lived with his grandmother, who was giving him more lessons of the same. So Ralph Bunche was a studious young man, and he graduated from Jefferson High School as valedictorian of his class. So he was tremendously intellectual and a smart young man. After that, he went to UCLA. In 1927, he graduated from the University of California at Los Angeles as valedictorian of that class. He gave the graduating speech and a lot of intellectual speeches about race, international relations, etc. 1928, got his master's degree from Harvard University and continued studying at Harvard when he started teaching at Howard University in Washington, D.C. And in 1934, he got his PhD in political science from Harvard University as well. And he was also writing some of the early thoughts of the United Nations as it was just forming after World War II. And he teamed with Eleanor Roosevelt as they were trying to come up with a declaration of human rights, a universal declaration of human rights that the whole world would pay respect to. And so it was Eleanor that chaired it, though. Eleanor Roosevelt chaired that, and she pushed it through and got all the countries to agree to it. A difficult challenge. One, she was a woman and would not always be respected. And two, a lot of countries did not believe the same things that she was trying to tell everybody, that there should be some human rights that everybody shared together. And it was on December 10th, 1948, that she was successful in getting this universal declaration of human rights. And we've seen it in many forms. You've seen that the essence of it is that all people are created equal. Not all men are created equal. Not all white men or black men or red men or any color men. Or not all Christian men or Muslim men or Jewish men. It was about all people. So the Declaration, there were 30 principles in the Declaration of Human Rights. And eventually, it caught on with the whole world. So Human Rights Day every year is celebrated December 10th all over the world. And that's the day that the Pulitzer Prize is given. And by the way, Ralph Bunche won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1950. 1950, yes, that's the same year that, the same prize that Dr. King would win in 1964. But Ralph Bunche was the first African-American to win that Nobel Peace Prize. And he and Eleanor Roosevelt had kind of together chaired this universal Declaration of Human Rights. And it was worldwide news, and it's still celebrated even today. And this was the New York Times a couple of days after where the Declaration had passed and is still being celebrated even today. And the 50-year anniversary of this Declaration of Human Rights was in 1998 in the Clinton administration. And he started a special award, the Eleanor Roosevelt Awards for Human Rights. And one of the first recipients of that award was Representative John Lewis, the former great congressman from Georgia. He was one of the first winners of that award, and that award is still being celebrated all over the world. And where it was not legally binding, now it has become very close to legally binding, as so many nations have adopted it. And you can imagine in 1948 to call all humans equal. I mean, you had apartheid in South Africa and in America, and you had things going on in Russia and all over the world. But she thought it could raise the level of humanity, that she gave a great speech and encouraged people to adopt it. And it was adopted, and a very successful thing that the First Lady, former First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt did. And again, this was after FDR had died. And I would say that she is a person that had a great and successful life. She lived 17 years after FDR had died. And you think about people that made so many contributions after the White House. John Quincy Adams comes to mind. And of course, our own Jimmy Carter comes to mind as well, where they are respected not only for their time in the White House, but for contributions they made to humanity after the White House. So we'll be back with another segment on the former First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt and her struggle for civil and human rights.